Okay, I've got 2 o'clock Eastern Time. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Again, my name is John Luby, and I'm one of the application engineers here with FM Systems. Today we're going to go through the space management features in the version 8.2 product. I will try and run through things rather quickly. It looks like we've only got half an hour, and there are quite a few new features in the 8.2 release. But if you have any questions, please go ahead and enter those in the question panel on the right-hand side of the GoToWebinar panel. I do also want to occasionally put up a couple of polls just to get your ideas on what you're currently using and things like that. I appreciate those of you who logged in a little bit early and were able to tell us what you're currently using for different systems, whether it's a desktop application or maybe just spreadsheets or maybe another web-based system. So at this point in time, hopefully everyone can see my screen okay. What you're looking at is an example of version 8.2 and how this might be implemented. So before we get into that, I did want to at least get an idea of what currently you've seen before. So if you can, go ahead and just quickly choose one of the answers on the poll as to whether or not you've seen a demonstration of FM Interact before. And if you have, that's great. If you haven't, that's fine too. But we are going to try and start out with some of the newer features. So it looks like we've got most of the folks in there. So just to give you an idea of what we're looking at, we had about a third of the participants have seen it before, and the majority have not. So that's great. So we'll go ahead and actually get into the product. But again, if you've got questions, feel free to enter them at the side, and I'll do my best to address that. So FM Interact is an entirely browser-based system. The things that you're going to see in here today will be 100% within that browser environment. One of the biggest features about this product is the ability to configure it to look and feel and act as you need it to look and feel and act. And we really do differentiate between the word configuration and customization. So we've got a couple of examples of just some of our clients and what they've done before. You'll notice that their look and feel is very, very different than the demonstration that you'll see today. We really want to make sure that the program works for you. It's not that it gives you something else yet to learn a new approach. So Blue Cross Blue Shield of Minnesota had a system where for their general users, they navigate to information through a graphic. But their upper-level management team just needs a dashboard that's very robust, contains all of maybe their reports or figures about what do they have for vacancy, maybe any upcoming leases that are expiring, all sorts of different things on their dashboard. And again, I won't belabor the point, but you'll notice that most of these, they're not going to have any FM Systems branding. They're really designed to follow your corporate structure. As a matter of fact, the majority of our actual end users don't even realize that they're using an FM Interact product. They'll tell us things like, oh no, I go to the intranet to find that information, when in reality they're using our products. So as we go through this, just keep in mind that it can work very differently. So as some of those basic operations, what you might want to incorporate is some sort of a graphical navigation. We know that some people are really focused on maybe clicking on a graphic, maybe getting to information by navigating graphically to data. Everything that you see on the screen here is configurable. That means that this graphic up top can contain different information. And I'll show you that here in just a moment. The details down below, again, you've got the ability to decide what do you want to see there and how should that work for you. So just to give you a little bit of a better view I'll pull this up in a full screen, but what you'll notice is this graphic is currently showing some very basic information. We can pan, we can zoom, but it's showing us some fairly basic information about maybe what that room number is. In the top left, you'll notice that we've got the ability to theme that graphic with all sorts of different information. We call these graphic views. Now, a graphic view could be fairly basic, and it might even show something like an evacuation plan or fire alarm plan if we've got that. So let's say, for example, we give everybody in the organization the ability to see the evacuation plan. That's terrific. They can all see that information. But maybe we only allow certain groups, maybe departmental managers, for example, to see the departmental allocation of our spaces. And I apologize, I've been having problems with Internet Explorer here lately, so I will actually probably pull this up in our new viewer too. Let me see if I can get back to that. There we go. So if we're looking at things in a graphic, we might want to display maybe all of the departments, how they're laid out in the spaces, and perhaps even show a legend down below. You'll notice that we can even incorporate splits. So if a space is used maybe 40% by one department and 60% by another department, again, it can automatically generate that. What's happening is these are being themed with colors and hatch patterns, maybe even labels at runtime, meaning that when I make that selection, I'm actually going out, grabbing all of the database information live, and theming that graphic to show things on that floor plan. This particular graphic view is showing me all of the vacancies, the places on my floor plan where maybe I've got a higher capacity than I currently have occupancy. Maybe those get shown in green. Well, you might notice that some of these have different labels as well. This space shown in white currently has an occupant in that space, Jay Richardson. We might have other spaces, like the one below it, that are completely in green, meaning that it's currently vacant. And then to the right of that, we can even look at things that are showing us multiple criteria. So maybe it's currently vacant, but on June 6th, we're planning on moving somebody into that space. So space management works very well in conjunction with the other modules, like move management. So if it's a scheduled move, we can even see it on a graphic. Now, what we're also able to do is that we're able to look at this information in a whole host of ways. So let's say, for example, we were looking at that inside our browser, which was Internet Explorer. One of the newest features with 8.2 is that you can even decide what viewer do you want to use. With our system now, there are 3 viewers that we support. We have the Autodesk Design Review Viewer, and maybe we use that inside Internet Explorer. But perhaps when we're inside Firefox, maybe we use the new FMI Floor Plan Viewer, and I'll show you that here in a moment. We also support devices like tablets, but sometimes maybe you just want a PDF on that tablet. So what that really means is that depending upon your browser, your preferences, you can control how you want to see the floor plan. In this case, we're pulling this up in a brand new viewer. This is the viewer that is now shipping with our product. It's an HTML5 viewer. It allows us to still interact, zoom in, but you'll notice that there are some additional features. We can select anywhere within a space and display the details about that space down below. We can also start looking at information a little bit differently. You can still pan and zoom and do those same actions, but you'll now notice that we can even take a look at information maybe that is dealing with zones. So perhaps we want to try and look at how all of our spaces are being occupied. Maybe those spaces are being occupied by different groups. One of the newest trends that we're seeing in facility management is that users might not only be assigned to a space, they might be assigned to a grouping of spaces. Maybe every morning they can come in and the sales group might get to choose from any of those spaces. Well, as part of the new features in 8.2, you can even build those spaces on the fly. So meaning I might actually select a space, right-click, and I can even assign perhaps a different zone, something that I want to work with on that particular floor plan. We can also even select multiples. So maybe we want to perform that action, but we'd like to do it on multiple zones or multiple spaces. Very quickly, you can make those adjustments, and our legend is going to dynamically update. So the system is really designed to function the way that you would expect. If we're looking at reports, and again, we might do this in either browser, a report might allow us to try and analyze information. So we could look at things like maybe all of our space allocation, but we'd like to get a little bit of a better idea of where is our space, what's the capacity, and maybe how we want to visualize that in a report. Throughout our system, there are dozens of different reports, and I'll click on a few of them here in a second. But all of the reports can go ahead and be printed. They can even be exported to 7 common formats. So just as an example, PDF and Excel are probably the most common report formats that we use, but I'll go ahead and export this to Excel just so that you can see that if you've got those folks that they live and breathe with Excel, you can get them in a report in their format that still has the images and the data, as well as that formatting, including that ability to expand and collapse and see the information in the manner that they want. In a lot of reports, what you'll find is that you've got the ability to not only view that report, but perhaps even filter it down to just a specific location. Maybe we've got an example where we're trying to increase our space utilization, and we've been working hard in a particular facility to achieve a higher target. So in this case, we're at a little over 42%. But again, we were filtering that same exact report, but now it's just showing us the site and the building, maybe even the floors associated with that data. Just a couple of other reports, just to give you some idea of just how differently information can be displayed. You can use pie charts, bar charts, scatter graphs, gauges, all sorts of different reporting options. We support out of the gate SQL Server reporting services. That's what all of our reports are built in as we ship the product. But we also support Crystal reports. So a lot of organizations are accustomed to using Crystal reports. Those are supported as well. And we also have an ad hoc reporting tool. And again, I'll show you some of those tools here in just a moment. Information might be in tabular format too. So it really depends upon what types of information you want to see. Maybe you need to see information in multiple units. If you've got overseas operations or just different countries that we're working with, sometimes we need those units in imperial units. Sometimes we need it in metric units. So again, depends upon what level of detail you want to see and how that information is best displayed. Now, of course, with any data, we have to try and figure out how we're going to manage that information. For that, we can view information graphically, as you saw, but we can also interact with it. So let me come back to a graphic. When I'm looking at a floor plan, what I might actually want to do is select a space. Maybe we're trying to get some details about that space. In this case, we've decided to output a few fields of data. So how big is the space? Maybe which department is in there? What type of a space is it? Perhaps even the capacity. You can even incorporate images, and you'll see that throughout almost everything that we do in the application. But you might even now want to look at related information. Spaces might contain no occupants. They might contain one occupant. They might contain multiple occupants. Everything in here, because it's in a browser environment, it's clickable. It allows us to pull up information that might even be being pulled from an HR system. And I would say the majority of our clientele, they end up getting this type of data from an HR system. We have tools built right into the application that allow us to not only view that data, but maybe every night at midnight, we might get an update from the HR system so that we're not having to re-enter information. You can also incorporate images that maybe you've got security software in place and you use badging operations. If those images exist, again, you can leverage that data. But back buttons or hyperlinks will always get you back to the details that you might want to see. Spaces can also contain things. Now, we break those groupings up. We call them all assets, but we break those groupings up into catalogs of information. We might have things like office equipment or IT equipment or furniture or even building equipment. Each grouping might have unique fields of data. So for example, when it comes to furniture, we might want to track whether or not this is an ergonomic piece of furniture. So I added a field, and I'll show you that here in a moment. I added a field for whether or not this is ergonomic. But if I'm looking at things like computer equipment, I don't necessarily need to know if it's ergonomic. I might want to know what's the operating system. How much RAM does it have? When's the warranty expire? Things along those lines. So again, different groupings can have different pieces of data. When we talked about these graphics and just how much detail they can represent, they're also dynamic in nature. So let's say I'm looking at space types. I want to see all of my spaces and how they're currently allocated, perhaps. Well, you might notice that I'm looking at, I'm just going to zoom in so that you can see it enough. I might be looking at a floor plan, and I notice that this room, maybe I'm doing a walkthrough, and I notice that somebody has labeled this room as an equipment room. Maybe it's actually supposed to be an office. Well, you'll notice a couple of things. Right now, we're showing that we have 8 equipment rooms and 18 offices. But this user has been given permissions to edit data. Now, we do support field-level locking, which means that even though I've been given access to edit data, I might not be able to change all data. But maybe I can make changes to things like the space class, the corresponding space type, and maybe even the capacity. Now, before I hit save, these are the fields that we're updating. So as I save that data, you'll notice that that information instantly changed. But you might have also noticed that the graphic just updated as well. That space changed from green to blue. And you might even notice that my legend updated. Our equipment rooms went from 8 to 7, and our offices went from 18 to 19. So it's dynamic in nature. I don't need to push that out to anyone else to see those changes. Now, when we're talking about information in the system, the other way that we might view information is in data format. So again, you can have as many graphical representations as you want. And again, those are all permissionable, so you get to decide who can see them. But you can do the same with data views. A data view is always going to have a couple of parts to it. We've got a grid that appears at the top, and if we select a record, we'll see the details about that record down below. All of the grids work like you would expect, where we can click on a heading to sort ascending or click it again to sort it in the opposite direction. We can also start filtering things down. So maybe we always run into the question of, hey, how many offices do we have? Very quickly, I could see we've got 197 of them. Or perhaps, how many conference rooms do we have that can accommodate 8 or more people? Well, at any point in time, I can pull that up, and I can see we've got 41. It also has the ability to walk right through a wizard and build your own. In addition to that, we've got on-the-fly filters. So what that means is that maybe I'm only interested in my spaces in the 900 building. Well, I can pull those up pretty quickly, and I can see I've got 455. I can add another criteria and say maybe I'm only looking for spaces in the 900 building that contain the word office somewhere in the room name. Very quickly now, I'm looking at 38 records. Again, all of the idea behind this is that we can pull up that detail, maybe see the data that we want to see, and of course, if we want, to be able to get back to that graphic and get an idea of where we are. In things like data views, we can also look at this a little bit differently. Let's say, for example, we're trying to do a floor condition assessment. Well, you might notice I don't see anything that says floor condition. There's nothing down below that says floor condition. Our system is structured that can be configured in the database. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to log in as somebody who has administrative privileges. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to modify one of our existing tables to contain a brand new field. So I'm going to give it a database field name of maybe floor condition. This is something, by the way, we even train people on how to do. And maybe in the database I'll save it as FLCOND. We can work with numbers, dates, text, whatever it may be. But what I like to do is I like to make a drop-down list so that I can control what gets entered. So I'm going to give them a few different options. In my case, I'm going to give them the option for 0 through maybe 4. Those options are going to equate to whether it's poor, fair, good, maybe excellent, and perhaps even new. So what this is going to do is now I've just controlled what people can enter. That quickly, I've added a brand new field to the database. When I want people to be able to work with that, I get to decide where do I want them to see it. Is it part of a graphic? Is it part of a data view? How do I want them to access it? Well, we'll work inside that Room Updates data view. There's the grid that shows up at the top, so I'll go ahead and add that field to that grid at the top because I'd like my item to display in the grid. Maybe I've decided, there are a couple of things in here we don't need to see. You can also remove things without affecting the data. You're just simply saying, in that graphic or that data view, I don't want to see those. When I want somebody to edit that data, same type of thing is I can come in here and add that field. And now what I've done is I've given myself the ability to control not only who can see it, but maybe where that information is saved. And that quickly, we just configured the product. I don't need to push it out to anyone. It's a change that just happened inside the application. And now anytime the people that we've given access to that data view come in, they'll see floor condition. If you remember, we made it available as a drop-down list. So there's our option for our drop-down list to even do condition assessment. So our system is so flexible that it really can meet almost any demand that you might have on it. So as we make those changes, not only is that field guaranteed to upgrade with anything that we do in the system, but it's also guaranteed to work just like everything else. So if we do a sort on the headings, it's going to sort ascending, it's going to sort descending based upon that data. It will guarantee to upgrade to the next release, and it's now available in the system. So I did want to leave a couple of minutes for some questions that people might have at the end. If you've got any questions, go ahead and enter those into the panel at the right, and I'll do my best to get those answered here now. But we'll take a couple of minutes and take a look at this. Okay, it looks like we've got a few questions in here. So are these maps created and loaded via AutoCAD? They are. We have an interface for both AutoCAD and Revit. That interface allows us to interact with not only the data inside AutoCAD, but also to publish out from AutoCAD into a format that we might be able to view on the system. So just to give you a quick idea here, I'll open up that same floor plan that we've been looking at from FM Interact. I'll open it up inside AutoCAD. You'll notice that we require a couple of things. We've got a polyline that we need, and maybe a piece of text or a block with attributes. What that allows us to do is connect this drawing to the FM Interact database through web services. So you don't have to be sitting in the same location. What that then can allow us to do is we can even say, hey, CAD user, you might be able to make changes to certain fields. Let's say I'm going to change something like the capacity. If I make that change inside the system, I can very quickly see that change inside FM Interact. So it's instantly updated because the database is the same exact database. So I can see that in either location. But great question. We support both AutoCAD and Revit. And then, do you build the layout in the system? I'm not entirely sure what you're talking about there, but the layout for dashboards, we can also incorporate dashboards into the system. And that's all part of the administrative tools too. So just to give you an idea of what I mean by that, you might even have multiple dashboards. So let's say you're a space planner, and you find that you're always running into situations where you need to see a few reports all at once. Very quickly, you could see that dashboard maybe with those different reports or data that you want to see. Yes, as the question is, do polylines need to be changed through AutoCAD rather than in the system? They do, because what we look at is AutoCAD is a design package. What we're working with is as maintained drawings. So drawings that are being used through the system to control data. So we don't want to change a design software. we work with it. So any other questions? If you've got any other questions, I'd appreciate you going ahead and answering those here. But hopefully that helped give you some idea of what we can look at, what we can do in the system. And if you've got any other questions, again, I'll stay on for a few more minutes, and please feel free to enter those. Well, thank you once again, and at this point, we'll go ahead and conclude this webinar.